Okay.
Okay, niistä Siipii'na'moiyaakii Dolly Creighton, and I work with Kainai Wellness Centre. My role is with community engagement, mental health. I work with a team of mental health, residential school, and cultural support.
So tell us a bit about the Elders Community Wellness Initiative.
Okay, in the fall of 2019, I think September, the late Jackie Red Crow, she organized a group of elders to go to a national elders gathering in Winnipeg. And so Keith and I, Keith also works with Kainai Wellness Centre, we escorted these elders to Winnipeg, and elders from all over Canada were there. It was I've never seen that many elders in my life. So in bringing these elders, one of the conditions was that when they come back, that they would then start giving back to our community and start helping us elders with our community wellness initiatives in our community. And so we started a focus group. I think I had 3 focus group meetings. And then the plan was to spread out and start going to each community. But because of COVID, everything just kind of stopped. Mm-hmm. So to make the story short, we had about maybe 3 focus group meetings. We also, with Terry also organized that we were having a family violence conference here at the multipurpose, and she asked me if I could have the elders come and take a part. We were going to do a presentation, but it ended up that we did I used the elders for the whole conference. And it was a really good turnout because I had the elders, each of them, I gave them a Blackfoot word, and they got up and they spoke on that Blackfoot word, the meaning of its stories, and I just interpreted in English. I got a lot of good feedback from participants, and so that was the one major, I think, to me was really huge, and because of the good response we received, we're going to do it again when COVID is over and when we're able to do gatherings. So going back to the Elders Community Wellness Initiative, when we got home, I put a plan together and I called it a Community Wellness Initiative. And so just to talk about that at that elders gathering in Winnipeg, what is his name? One of the commissioners for the TRC was one of the keynote speakers.
Yeah. Murray Sinclair?
Yeah, Murray Sinclair. And one of the things that he focused on was that, number one, the lack of elder representation with local governments, community organizations, programs, and 2, the low life expectancy from poor health, education awareness, and effects of opioid and prescription drug abuse, misuse and abuse. And the 3rd one was a lack of a cultural space or designated place for teachings. So just to follow up those, when I put this plan together, one of the main important things was many of us when we say elder, right away we think because it's an old person. Well, I think I've worked in this area in the early 2000s. I worked in Ottawa with the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, and I worked with elders throughout Canada. And at that time, we kind of put not a definition, but a common understanding of what an elder is. So I just want to just tell you what we put together, and I'm using that. And I said that an elder is a leader or a senior in a group of people, in this case, blood tribe. And an elder is a person who's valued for wisdom and holds a position of responsibility and authority in a group or in a community. And so what are the components of eldering or eldership? Well, those would include support, being involved in a community, teaching and passing down knowledge, and being respectful and sharing experiences. And I guess it's being role models. So when I was doing this program, I did some research, and after using that, keeping that in mind, I said that to date, the population of the Blood Tribe membership at the time, in the fall of 2020, was about almost 13,000. And out of that, there are 700 members over the age of 65. And I looked at some of those people that I know, and I said, I'm thinking of our language being as the foundation of who we are in our culture as Kainai. Our language is still spoken by this age group, these 700 members, and but it's at risk of being lost because a lot of our elders are passing on. And just to go back to the conference we had, 3 of them have passed on that participated in this conference. One of them is Johnny Day Ryder. He participated at conference. Norbert Fox, Crosschild. What is his name? Anyways, so these elders I'm talking about that are over 65 and still speak their language, they possess many years of life and work experiences. And we're thinking, and when we had our focus groups, some of the things that those elders talked about was that only a handful of them are utilized by community programs or organizations for various reasons. So elders in our community, I guess my focus is like elders in our community, they need to be recognized for their stories, their art, their songs, and their language, and their life and work experiences that they could share. So while many of them have retired and they're at home, and maybe some of them are caring for their grandchildren, they can still be consulted about programs and service involvement. So that's kind of the background of this Elders Community Wellness Initiative.
Right.
So one of the goals that we hope, or we're aiming for, or we hope, our intention is by empowering our elders with the necessary support, these elders that we're going to use to help us in community wellness initiatives, we can make a positive step in helping to close a lot of gaps in transferring cultural knowledge and information to promote community wellness. Also, to inspire the next generation to learn and use our culture. When I say culture, a culture is a way of life, including values, beliefs, traditions, customs, and traditions, customs, and language that are meaningful to constructive coping skills. Also, I'm going to say this, to shine a light on the different components of eldership and the important role of elders in addressing, let's say, an era of issues. So many issues affecting wellness in our community. And number 4, elders not only play a very integral part of in preserving cultural knowledge, including traditions related to wellness, they're also kind of the center or the pivot in helping to tackle broader community issues affecting community health, such as addictions, housing, parenting, education, unemployment, racism, and oppression. And the last one, but not least, is these are our hopes, our intentions for this initiative. It's those who have paved the way and left a legacy of a rich language, which is our Blackfoot language, and our proud culture, will be able to be treasured and continually celebrated by future generations. So that is kind of our goals, what we're aiming for. I hope to see the day when those will be achieved. But in reality, our objectives, what we hope to achieve, is to plan and develop projects, programs, initiatives, and activities related to empowering elders with the support that they need in order to get their participation in community wellness promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 4 objectives that we kind of put out very broad, and number 1 is to establish a focus group or focus groups of about 8 to 10 community elders in each community that will be utilized to gather information in many areas. Information on these objectives that I'm going to have in the following issues. Number 1 is to enhance, is to add on, enhance the importance of the important role of healthy elders through education, awareness, information sessions. So when I say healthy elders, I'm talking about the elders understanding what is an elder, the one I just explained and described. Number 2, to identify how community elders could participate in the transfer of knowledge, culture, and language in various community wellness programs and services. Number 3, this is something that we're really looking at, and it's an objective. We will do it when COVID is over. It's to plan a community elders gathering that will celebrate and focus on the importance, resilience, and richness of our culture. The 4th one is to identify the need to include elder participation in Blood Tribe Kainai Department of Health, in the Blood Tribe Department of Health plan for community wellness. So having said that, since COVID has kind of prevented us from doing any of this, on another note, Kainai Wellness Centre has been conducting day treatment programs related to substance use and abuse. And Hassan Natvi is a lead role in this initiative, and Hassan is our specialist in Kainai Wellness Centre. He's a medical doctor, he's a psychiatrist, and he's an addiction specialist. He also leads the mental health team. So he has initiated these wellness day treatment programs once a week on Thursdays, and the team, they take turns in presenting different topics. And this week being, this month, or if it's this week, National Addictions Awareness Week, our director Terry and Hassan and the mental health team identified the need, the idea that the elders, we discussed to involve elders in the day treatment programs. And it was identified that this idea would fit into the goals and objectives of the elders plan. So it was then decided that one day during National Addictions Awareness Week, which was yesterday, we would schedule to bring together a group of 8 selected elders and deliver a session for them on addiction, on substance use. And this would fall under the objectives of this Elders Community Initiative plan I just shared. So the goals of this presentation yesterday was to empowering healthy elders with the support that they need, which includes information, education, awareness sessions. So the intent of yesterday's session was to provide information on the symptoms, causes, and treatment of substance use and abuse, and the importance of understanding the needs of individuals who are involved in substance use and abuse in our community. So it is our hope to enhance the elders' knowledge about replacing the labeling. All of us, not just elders, I think all of us in our community, we label and go into judgment about people using that are involved in substance use and abuse, and the labeling of clients as being sick or as being resistant of being uncooperative, with that of being affected by an injury. Okay, they're sick, they're injured, kimadapsia and all that. So, and they should stop this, they should quit this, they should change their lives. Why are they doing this? So we viewing trauma as an injury shifts this conversation from asking, what is wrong with you, versus what happened to you. And to us as a team, that is what we're working with, with people with substance use and abuse in the mental health area of counseling and therapy. Because this is what it's all about. Counseling and therapy is not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. Because these people, something happened to all of us that create our way of life, how we think, the decisions we make. So using elders in this way doesn't mean necessarily require these clients to start disclosing to elders, or the elders to start telling them, you disclose your stories. It's just, but to promote that services are available and provided in ways that recognize the need for physical and emotional safety, as well as choices, and that they have control in decision making that it's going to affect their treatment. So this is more about the overall essence of the approach or way of being in a relationship as a helper than a specific treatment strategy or method. Mm-hmm. So having said that, also to be able to assist clients when and how cultural traditional ceremony is appropriate.
Okay. So I was thinking about, well, first of all, the elder we were talking about was Alvin on the stomach that we lost, and you mentioned earlier. Okay, so this being National Addictions Awareness Week, there was an elders gathering. We didn't get around to all the topics. You were to do a presentation on unresolved grief as one of the major impacts of the effects of the legacy of colonization and Indian residential schools. Could you tell us a bit about that presentation, how this relates to substance abuse and addictions, if you could give us an overview of that?
Okay. So I've my work experience and life experience with the impacts and effects of colonization residential schools, this whole legacy. I went to residential school for 10 years, and I've worked in this area since the early 2000s. I worked in this area when I worked for Health Canada as the mental health coordinator for Alberta region. And this is how I introduced mental health. And when I developed that model, it just came out that the effects and the impacts of this whole change of our culture, another culture coming in to tell us that our culture was bad, and that they were going to teach us a new culture. Now, going back to my earlier information, I said that the definition of culture is a way of life. It's a lifestyle that involves language, that involves values, it involves beliefs and philosophies and stories and history, traditions and customs. So all those were kind of taken away from us by force, and we were taught a new culture, a new way of life. We were taught a new language. We were taught new values. We were taught new belief systems, new philosophies, new stories. We were taught new traditions, new customs. And as a result of that, many of our people got confused. But one of the main effects that I find, I'm not going to go into great detail, but one of the main effects, I've developed a model in doing presentations with this and why we are the way we are. One of the main effects that I focus on is because we as First Nations people, and Kainai blood tribe, not just blood tribe, but all First Nations people, we have our culture is that of a holistic lifestyle. We believe that the human being has a physical body, has a mind to think, has emotions to feel, and has spirit. Now that was all changed. It's been dismantled, and they've taken physical health services separately, mental health services separately, emotional health services separately, spiritual. So that of the human being is all separated and out of balance. And as the elders would say, we're not whole anymore. We're out of balance. But one of the focus, to answer your question, is when we look at the emotional aspect of the human being. In this new lifestyle, we were taught or forced not to express and show our emotions. In this institution, we were punished, or there was consequences. We were not allowed to express them. And by expressing them is talking about them, expressing them by crying, by showing tears, and because and then I'm going to go right into grief and loss. When a human being experiences a loss in their life, it could be a huge loss or a small loss, but a huge loss may be a loss of a family member through death or separation or abandonment, or that's a huge loss. And any human being on this planet, when we experience a loss, we're hurting emotionally, okay? And now with my mental health background, I use that to explain this, because when we experience a loss, there's 4 major emotions that surface. And those are anger, bitterness, resentment, and guilt. So if those are the emotions that surface, we need to express those and deal with them. So grief surfaces those. So grief and mourning are 2 separate things. So grief is when those emotions surface. Mourning is expressing and dealing with them. It means even if it's just to talk about them, even if just to say, this is how I feel, I'm angry, and this is why I'm angry. Doesn't mean you're going to express them by making holes in the wall or throwing stuff. Maybe sometimes that helps, but you're not hurting anybody. So if these emotions are discouraged to express, we internalize them. In Blackfoot, we'll say, and this, of course, has other consequences and creates disease and illness. So I guess this brings me to my background, my professional background as a psychosomatic therapist in holistic health. And I have a degree in that. I went to school in Australia, and I work with energies. So I compare all those with that information knowledge. So if we can't express that and we just internalize them, and but it's very painful. The emotional pain we're experiencing is so devastating. We want to, the new lifestyle, this new culture, or this society now, we learn that there's some things we can do to numb that emotional pain. And one of them is substance use. And we've made that part of our culture. Or just, or who has a nerve pill, give it to them. And when we see someone, we're so uncomfortable when we see someone mourning and to express their emotions. So, and so then eventually, continuing to use that method, there's many other methods, but I'm focusing on substance use. Continuous use of this, then the next thing is addiction. Then we become addicted, becomes a habit, then you become addicted, and then it begins to have other problems, physical, emotional, mental health, spiritual issues. So, so addiction as mainstream society will say, the indigenous people, their problem is addiction. It isn't. It's a symptom of a root cause. And so that's what my presentation was going to be about, and how this relates. Unresolved grief. So we don't know how to grieve. We have not grieved because we don't know how to grieve because we weren't taught how to grieve. And so we walk around this unresolved grief, and that's been passed on from generation to generation. It's been 7 generations since colonization happened, since residential school happened. And that way of life has been passed on from generation to generation, and this is what we see today. So I guess the objective of my presentation is to assist participants to understand this and begin to deal with that unresolved grief just by mourning and expressing these emotions that have surfaced. It could be so many from so back, and now sometimes they don't even remember what they are. So I guess my main message is to start expressing them. Talk to someone, express them, someone that you feel comfortable with, that you can talk about this. And I guess here, Kainai Wellness Centre, that's what we offer. And again, here is to start with our elders, that they too have been carrying around a lot of unresolved grief. So in empowering them to become healthy elders so that we can use them, that this is information, education, awareness that I think is important for them to know and to learn for themselves. This way they could understand a lot of the people that are going to be going to them for their assistance and just supporting them. So I don't know if that makes sense, but...
and one of the main messages, I guess, from them yesterday was that they are willing to help. They are willing to learn, and they're willing to come and support and invite the younger people to come out. And
I guess just one thing I want to add to this, I don't know if it's appropriate, but many of us, because of this confusion of our culture, many of us tend to think when we see elders or culture, they're going to talk about sacred ceremony, traditions, and customs. And I mentioned that yesterday. There's a time and place for that. I was taught by my teachers that there's a time and place for that. When we ask questions, I know my dad told me, if you're curious, don't ask those questions. If you're curious, samistutsit. So what I just said is, if you're curious, then be a part of it. So these sacred groups in our community, sacred societies, there's a time and place for them. So a lot of people, when they hear culture, they think that's what it is. That's one of our traditions and customs when I talk about culture. To me, culture is our values, our beliefs, our philosophies, our history, especially our values. That's our culture, our language. So we don't need to be talking about ceremony, about the traditions of ceremony, about pipes, and that there's a time and place for that. This is a way of life, and this is what, to me, many of our people, the confusion that they have, and they're afraid to speak to elders because of this.
And unfortunately, trauma, addiction is part of our way of life now, unfortunately. Before we wrap up here, I'm just wondering if you could give us a quick example of a word that you've used in maybe some of your more memorable translations. I know we did an exercise as well one time with a word that we had to translate and share with the group. How does that fit? I think mine was come in dog, something like So I kind of related that to being in a doghouse, right? So it can get quite amusing. Is there any one that stands out for you?
Just in this whole area, to me, a very important Blackfoot word jumps out at me, and that's the word gamutani. You hear that when we pray. I think every elder that prays, or everyone that prays in Blackfoot, uses that word gamutani. And even that is misused, misinterpreted. To me, the interpretation of Kamutani is to survive from a traumatic experience in our past. So salvation is to survive, is to be resilient and survive a trauma. And when you mentioned, yes, our history was trauma, involved a lot of trauma, maybe not in this generation, but they inherited the impacts and effects of that trauma from 7 generations. So Kamutani, we ask for that, we manifest that for our people today and tomorrow, that we overcome those impacts and effects of our trauma. And that's what Kamutani means.
Okay, so this is National Addictions Awareness Week. You have a wealth of experience, education, and now working with the elders. And any last comments? What would you say to encourage those struggling? What would you tell them?
Struggling with
addictions and trauma and so forth. Just in along the themes of National Addictions Awareness Week. What advice would you give to those struggling with addiction?
Well, I guess it depends which ones. There's ones that have totally, to me, I would say, have totally given up hope, and without judgment, this is how they are. They're looking for understanding. They don't realize that they're looking for understanding because now they're in this space of addictions. I don't know, but to me, when we talk about detox, what does that mean? Well, to me, when I look at detox, I go back to our culture, and there's a Blackfoot word that elders use or that I use, and they'll say, "Agastumatumai." Agastumatumai. So that to me, now I'm going to talk, that entity is now have taken over their whole being, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The entity that has taken over their being. And so how do we detox that? To me, when I think about detox, that's what I think of. You need to get that out of your system before you can respond to treatment, before you can respond to someone counseling and therapy. Right now, the substance user, their main priority is they get up in the morning and their priorities, I need a fix. Where am I going to get my fix? How am I going to get my fix? Because they believe, and in some cases they will, that if they don't get it, they're going to die. And that's true, they will. So they're looking for their survival. The survival as substance users. So I guess for that group, I would say, ispummoxit. Ispummoxit. So help yourself, because they know that they're in this. Other groups of misuse, and I would say the same thing to them. Help yourself. Reach out. Reach out. A lot of people care about you. You do exist on this planet.
Well, thank you very, very much. I hope to come back and revisit some of these concepts and these teachings and the amazing strength we could draw from our elders. Thank you and have a nice day.
Sugapi.